The hallways of Junheng Law firm glimmered with marble floors and glass-paneled offices that whispered wealth and power. In a place like this, status wasn't just worn, it was weaponized. Natalie Shaw moved through the corridors with a mop and a silent grace. Dressed in plain work clothes, her figure nearly disappeared among the expensive suits and pencil skirts of the firm's elite. To them, she was invisible. But today, she wasn't. Not with that bracelet on her wrist. "That's the Cartier Love bracelet from last season," remarked Melissa York, a junior associate with flair for cruelty masked as curiosity. She pointed at Natalie's wrist, drawing the attention of several others. Natalie instinctively covered it with her sleeve. "Oh, this? I got it from a street vendor. Just a knockoff. A few bucks, really." Felix Turner scoffed. "Yeah, right. You think we don't know luxury when we see it." A murmur spread. Melissa stepped closer, nose wrinkled. "Well, fake or not, who knows where that thing's been? You're a janitor. You shouldn't be parading luxury like that. Maybe don't wear knockoffs you can't clean," Felix added smugly. "You'll damage your hands. That bracelet's probably rusted already." Natalie offered a tight smile and went back to scrubbing the floor. "Move aside," Melissa snapped as she pretended to trip, spilling her coffee directly onto the freshly mopped tiles. "Oops, clumsy me." Natalie flinched as warm liquid splashed across her sleeves. Just then, a frail voice interrupted the jeers. "Be careful where you step, young lady," said Grandma Evelyn, her voice firm and deceptively sweet as she stepped into the hallway using her cane for balance. Her eyes, sharp as ever, landed on Melissa. "And apologize." Melissa's expression faltered. It was just a mistake. Besides, "I wasn't talking to the cleaner," Grandma Evelyn cut in. "I was talking to you. And for your information," she turned to a gathering crowd, "Article 234 of the criminal law states that workplace bullying involving intentional bodily harm may constitute a criminal offense. Do you need a printed copy?" The hall fell silent. Natalie's eyes widened slightly. She hadn't expected backup. "Grandma, you're here?" A voice said behind them. It was Chris Grant, the firm's most renowned lawyer, sharp, stoic, and utterly untouchable. He approached, fixing his loose tie. Grandma Evelyn gave him a long, knowing look. "I've been watching from a distance. 3 months is long enough, don't you think?" Chris raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she said, turning back to Natalie, "it's time you settled down. You're not getting any younger, and I've heard you like women in law." "Grandma." "I'm serious," she said with finality. "Natalie here works hard, doesn't care about labels, and helps her elders without asking for anything in return." Melissa gaped. "Her? She's just a cleaner." "Who helped me to the clinic last month when none of you would?" Grandma Evelyn replied. Chris looked between them, clearly caught off guard. Natalie turned away, embarrassed. Grandma Evelyn continued. "Starting today, my grandson will be working full-time in the firm. I expect all of you to treat him with the same respect you'd show anyone else." Felix whispered under his breath, "This place is full of surprises." Later that evening, Natalie was organizing files in a back room when she heard a soft knock. Chris stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets. "I just wanted to thank you," he said, voice low, "for helping my grandmother. She can be dramatic." "She's kind," Natalie replied, not looking at him, "and sharp." Chris smirked. "That too. I'm sorry about what happened earlier. Melissa's always been entitled." Natalie shrugged. "People like me get used to it." "You shouldn't have to," Chris said firmly. Then, after a pause, "What she said earlier about you helping my grandma, that wasn't the first time, was it?" Natalie finally looked at him. "No." He gave a small nod. "Then let me repay you." "With what?" she asked dryly. "A new mop." Chris stepped closer. "With an opportunity. Join my team. You've worked in this firm long enough to understand how it works. I've seen your case notes. You have potential." Natalie's mouth fell open. "You read my case summaries?" "They were slipped into the wrong pile," he admitted. "But I was impressed. I don't want pity." "This isn't pity," he said. "It's recognition." Natalie studied him. This wasn't the cold, calculating lawyer she saw on courtroom broadcasts. He seemed genuine. Then Grandma Evelyn appeared again, seemingly out of nowhere. Ah, perfect timing. Grandma, she raised her hand. Natalie, do you believe in marriage? Natalie blinked. Excuse me? I'm getting old. Grandma Evelyn said dramatically. My health is declining. My only wish is to see my grandson married before I go. Chris groaned. You're not dying. You just had indigestion. Hush, she snapped. Natalie, I've seen your kindness. You're the only one I trust. Will you marry him? Natalie burst out laughing, but Evelyn remained serious. I'm not asking for forever. Just help this stubborn man avoid all those vultures who only want his wealth. Chris rubbed his temples. Grandma, this is ridiculous. Is it? She said, her eyes gleaming. Because the paperwork is already drafted. All it needs is 2 signatures. Natalie stared at the old woman, then at Chris, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Are you both insane? She finally said. No, Grandma Evelyn replied. Just efficient. That night, Natalie sat in her small apartment staring at the unsigned marriage contract. Was this her chance? Or the biggest mistake of her life? Natalie Shaw hadn't slept all night. The marriage contract sat on her kitchen table, untouched but undeniably real. The pen Grandma Evelyn had handed her still rested on top, blue ink, cap off, ready for a signature that would change everything. Natalie wasn't naive. A fake marriage with Christopher Grant wasn't a simple favor. It was a gamble with her life, reputation, and heart. But somewhere deep down, she knew the world wouldn't hand her many second chances. By 7 a.m., she had made her decision. The marriage registry was quiet that morning, almost too quiet for what felt like the most absurd event of her life. Christopher stood beside her, sharply dressed in a navy suit. He smelled like citrus and authority. His expression was unreadable. So, he said, handing her the pen. Still not too late to back out. Natalie glanced at Grandma Evelyn, who was already handing over their documents to the registrar with the confidence of someone orchestrating a high-stakes merger. She took the pen. Let's get this over with. Click. Signature. Stamp. Flash of the camera. Congratulations to the bride and groom, the official said brightly. Natalie blinked. She was married. Sort of. Oldly. Grandma Evelyn announced loudly on the phone as they walked out. Our little Chris finally got married. Yes, the prettiest girl in the firm. No, she's not a socialite. Better, she has a spine. Chris groaned as she hung up. Grandma, how many people are you calling? Everyone who ever nagged me about you being single. Evelyn said. It's a long list. Chris sighed. This is going to get out of hand. By noon, it already had. Natalie returned to firm only to find whispers echoing down every hallway. Isn't that the cleaning girl? No, she's not. She's married to Mr. Grant. Wait, what? I thought he had a thing for Vanessa Blake. At her desk, formerly in the shadows of the records room, Natalie now found herself relocated. A mahogany desk sat in a sunlit corner of Chris's department, complete with nameplate. Natalie Shaw, legal associate. She sat down slowly. Her hands shook as she booted up the firm-issued laptop. It felt like a trap waiting to spring. Just then, Melissa York walked by with a stack of papers and an arched brow. Well, sleeping your way to the top doesn't take long these days. Natalie didn't flinch. Don't worry. You'll never have to worry about that option. You're just a placeholder, Melissa hissed. Everyone knows Chris Grant's heart belongs to Vanessa Blake. Before Natalie could reply, Felix Turner leaned into the conversation. I heard Vanessa's back from Paris. With a necklace he bought her at an auction. $2 billion, Melissa added smugly. The heart of the ocean. Google it. Natalie clenched her jaw. She wasn't in this for love. She had agreed to help Grandma Evelyn, and maybe, just maybe, build a future for herself along the way. Love was never part of the deal. So why did the mention of Vanessa feel like a punch? That evening, Chris appeared in her new office, looking exhausted. Long day? Natalie asked, pretending to type something useful. Everyone's talking, he said, closing the door behind him. I've had 3 board members ask if I eloped. Natalie shrugged. You didn't exactly ease into this. He gave a crooked smile. You're handling this better than I expected. She raised an eyebrow. Did you think I'd panic? He stepped closer. No, I just didn't think you'd be so composed. Most people would be overwhelmed by all this. Natalie stood. I've spent my entire life having people underestimate me. This is nothing. Chris studied her for a long beat. You're full of surprises, he said. Then, as if catching himself, he turned back toward the door. By the way, my grandmother said something about giving you my salary card. Natalie chuckled. She gave it to me herself. Password's your birthday, apparently. Chris's ears turned pink. Unbelievable. She tilted her head. You really don't mind? He hesitated. No, I trust you. The air between them shifted slightly, warmer, curious, dangerous. But then came the knock. Brandon Hill entered, looking flushed. Boss, sorry to interrupt. Vanessa Blake is in the lobby. She says she's here to reclaim what's hers. Chris froze. Natalie's stomach dropped. Later that night, Natalie sat in the staff cafeteria alone, poking at a tray of fried rice she had no appetite for. She wasn't jealous. She barely knew Chris. But being publicly declared his wife only to be shoved aside for his supposed first love? That stung. She didn't even hear Chris approach until he slid into the seat beside her. She left, he said quietly. Natalie didn't look up. Did she bring the necklace? He sighed. Yes, but it means nothing. Then why do you look like you've been hit by a truck? I didn't expect to see her. It's been years. And yet, she still calls you hers. Chris leaned forward, voice low. Look, I know this is complicated. Natalie stood abruptly, grabbing her tray. We made a deal, Chris. I'm your fake wife, remember? I don't need explanations. Natalie. Save it, she said, walking away. I'm not your real wife. But at least try not to humiliate your fake one. She didn't see the expression that passed over his face as she left. Regret, laced with something deeper. At home, Natalie locked her door and collapsed on the couch. She had signed up for convenience, safety, maybe even professional opportunity. But now, she was caught in a storm she hadn't seen coming. And the worst part? She was beginning to care. The days that followed were brutal. Natalie Shaw arrived at Junheng Law firm every morning to whispers that trailed her like perfume. The cleaner-turned-wife's story had taken on a life of its own, fueled by gossip, envy, and the recent reappearance of Vanessa Blake. By midweek, Natalie found herself the subject of more than just idle office chatter. She was being watched. She noticed at first when Brandon Hill, usually kind, hesitated when passing her in the hallway. Then Felix turned to stop replying to her internal emails. Finally, Melissa York, always too smug for her own good, walked past her desk with a smirk and whispered, Hope you backed up your files. Natalie's pulse quickened. Something was off. Then came the call from HR. Inside the conference room, Chris sat stiffly at the head of the table. Beside him was Mr. Quinn, the firm's compliance officer. Across the table, Natalie sat, flanked by 2 paralegals who looked far more like security guards than legal staff. Mr. Quinn opened a file. Natalie, we received an internal report accusing you of unauthorized access to Mr. Grant's private office late last night. Natalie blinked. That's impossible. I wasn't even. There's also an accusation, he continued, that confidential documents were leaked. Specifically, the Wong Midwest merger contract. Chris's head snapped toward him. What? That deal was strictly limited to 2 partners and me. Mr. Quinn nodded grimly. We believe the breach came from your office. Natalie's voice cracked. I didn't leak anything. I didn't even know there was a merger. Melissa York stepped into the room, holding a flash drive. We have footage. Natalie's heart thundered. That's not possible. The surveillance cameras haven't worked in that wing for days. Funny, Melissa said coolly. They worked last night. Mr. Quinn plugged in the drive. On screen, the grainy footage showed a figure, wearing clothes like Natalie's, entering Chris's office around midnight. Chris narrowed his eyes. Zoom in. They did. The angle was poor, the lighting worse. But the outline, it looked like her. Same height, same build. Natalie stood up. That's not me. Someone's setting me up. Mr. Quinn tapped his pen. There's also a missing copy of the contract in question, and your fingerprints were found on the door handle. Chris ran a hand through his hair. This has to be a mistake. Melissa smiled sweetly. She's always had access to the cleaning schedule, the room logs. It wouldn't be hard. Natalie turned to Chris. You don't believe this, do you? He opened his mouth, but no words came. That hesitation broke something inside her. I need to speak with Grandma Evelyn, Natalie said, rising. Mr. Quinn stood too. Natalie, I'm afraid until this is resolved, you're suspended. Effective immediately. Outside the firm, Natalie stood on the curb, the city spinning around her. Suspended. Accused. Alone. Her phone buzzed. Grandma Evelyn. Natalie? She answered, concern thick in her voice. What happened? I'm getting calls. Something about corporate espionage. Natalie choked back tears. They think I leaked a contract. What? That's absurd. I'll be right there. No, don't. Let me figure this out. You're my granddaughter-in-law, Evelyn said fiercely. No one messes with my family. Click. Chris sat alone in his office that night, playing the surveillance video on loop. Something didn't sit right. Natalie wasn't careless, and she had no motive. If anything, this mess risked everything she gained. A knock sounded. Brandon Hill entered, face pale. Boss. I checked the camera logs. You were right. Chris straightened. What did you find? The footage was tampered with, and we caught someone on the backup server. He handed over another drive. Chris loaded the video. His jaw clenched. The figure entering his office wore similar clothes, but the face was different, barely visible but familiar. Yao Meng, Melissa's closest friend. The next morning, Grandma Evelyn stormed into Junheng Law like a military general. Melissa, sipping her morning coffee, froze as the elderly woman approached. How dare you slander Natalie? Evelyn snapped. Do you know the consequences of false accusations? Melissa blinked. I didn't. Save it. I've contacted legal. If Natalie isn't reinstated today, heads will roll. Chris appeared behind them. Grandma. I've got this, Christopher, Evelyn said without breaking stride. No, he said calmly. I need to say something. He turned to the gathering employees, including Melissa, Felix, and Mr. Quinn. The footage accusing Natalie was doctored. The real culprit is Yao Meng. The tech logs confirm it. Gasps erupted. Melissa dropped her coffee. What? That's not possible. We traced the access code. It was yours, Melissa. She went pale. Chris crossed his arms. Pack your things. You and Yao Meng are both terminated. Effective immediately. You can't do this. I just did. Melissa spun toward Natalie, who had returned quietly moments earlier. You planned this. You framed me. Natalie stepped forward, her voice even. I didn't have to. The truth always finds its way out. Chris looked at her. Her chin lifted, unafraid. I want to clear my name, not humiliate anyone. But I won't be your scapegoat. He nodded. Understood. Later that day, as Natalie packed her things from her temporary suspension desk, Chris knocked lightly on the doorframe. I'm sorry, he said. She didn't respond. You were right. I should have trusted you from the beginning. I was alone, she said softly, and you knew I was telling the truth. He sat on the edge of the desk. I've never had to defend someone I cared about before. Natalie looked up. You care. Chris paused. More than I want to. She exhaled. Grandma says this marriage might not be so fake after all, he said with a small smile. She's already planning a real wedding ceremony. Don't push your luck, Mr. Grant. Chris chuckled. I'd never dare. But in his eyes was something serious. Something real. That night, Vanessa Blake stood in her luxury apartment, watching the scandal unfold on her tablet. The story had gone viral, Junheng Law scandal, the fired associates, and the unexpected loyalty of Christopher Grant to his fake wife. Her assistant entered. Should I call Junheng to reschedule your meeting? No, Vanessa said slowly, lips curving. Let them celebrate now. I'll let them think they've won. She turned toward the window, eyes gleaming. This game has only just begun. The week after Melissa and Yao Ming's dismissal passed with relative peace, Natalie Shaw returned to Junheng Law, with her name cleared and a quiet fire in her heart. People greeted her with cautious nods now, not respect, not yet, but no longer scorn either. Christopher Chris Grant, however, was harder to read. They hadn't discussed the feelings conversation again. He remained professional, polite, and distant, almost too distant. Natalie chalked it up to stress. After all, the firm was still reeling from the scandal. But then one crisp Thursday morning, Vanessa Blake returned, and the war quietly reignited. Natalie was sorting through contract binders when the entire office went still. Heels clicked along the marble hallway with the slow, rhythmic grace of someone who knew every eye was on her. Conversation stopped. Keyboards went silent. Natalie glanced up just as the elevator doors opened. There she was, Vanessa Blake, international legal consultant, heiress to the Blake Holdings fortune, and, if the rumors were true, the only woman Chris Grant had ever truly loved. She was everything Natalie wasn't. Tall, polished, with mane of dark curls swept back into a chignon, and a tailored cream dress that whispered power. And around her neck hung a dazzling sapphire necklace, the infamous heart of the ocean, said to be worth $2 billion. Gasps echoed as the jewel glinted beneath the firm spotlights. She's even more gorgeous in person, someone whispered. Natalie's jaw tensed. Vanessa's eyes found hers instantly. She smiled. It wasn't friendly. Mr. Grant will see you now, Brandon Hill said, though Chris hadn't actually sent for her. Natalie entered the conference room cautiously. Chris stood by the window, arms folded, looking out at the skyline. He didn't turn around. You heard, didn't you? I think everyone in Heisher heard, she replied. He sighed. Vanessa's back on contract. Temporarily. Natalie's voice lowered. Does she know about us? She does now. He turned to face her. She thinks this marriage is fake. And she's not wrong. Natalie met his gaze. Then what is it, Chris? An act? A favor? A temporary cover-up? He took a step closer. I don't know what it is anymore, but I know what it's not. She swallowed. And what's that? It's not nothing. Before either of them could say more, a knock interrupted. Vanessa swept into the room like she owned it. Oh, she said with exaggerated surprise. Did I interrupt a lover's quarrel? Chris's expression shut down. Vanessa. Relax, darling, she said, glancing at Natalie. I just wanted to formally meet the woman pretending to be your wife. I'm not pretending, Natalie said evenly. Vanessa's smile curled. Then you wouldn't mind showing us your marriage certificate? Natalie faltered. It's a home. How convenient, Vanessa said silkily. What wife doesn't carry proof these days? Chris stepped in. Enough, Vanessa. No, I'm just curious. Because rumor has it you married a nobody cleaner out of pity. She walked closer to Natalie, eyes gleaming. You must be very talented to climb that fast. Or maybe just lucky. Natalie stood her ground. Luck isn't a crime. But slander can be. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. Feisty. Tell me, does the necklace suit me? Natalie stared at the heart of the ocean, hanging from her rival's neck. Depend what you had to do to get it. Chris stifled a grin. Vanessa narrowed her eyes. You will regret that, she murmured. Natalie turned and walked out before Vanessa could see her shake. The attack wasn't just verbal. Over the next week, Vanessa made her presence known in more insidious ways. Files Natalie submitted were mysteriously misplaced. Vanessa, accidentally, spilled coffee on her notes. She hosted lunch meetings that included every department head, except Natalie. And through it all, she smiled sweetly. But Natalie refused to flinch. She did her job, she stayed late, and she watched, because something didn't add up. Vanessa's timing was too perfect. Her arrival too coincidental. And that necklace? No matter how extravagant Chris's family was, a $2 billion gem wasn't bought on a whim. She needed answers. One night, Natalie stayed behind after hours. Chris had left for a client dinner. Vanessa, she assumed, was off spinning her web somewhere glamorous. Natalie slipped into the records room with a key she'd copied weeks ago, just in case. She searched internal memos, expense records, travel logs. Nothing about the necklace. But then she found it. A flagged email exchange between Blake Holdings and King and York, Junheng Law's fiercest rival. Vanessa had been consulting for them 2 months ago. And now, here she was embedded in Junheng's walls, cozying up to Chris again. Natalie's chest tightened. This wasn't about romance. It was infiltration. The next morning, Natalie placed the printouts in a sealed envelope. She headed for Chris's office, but was stopped halfway by a crowd near the break room. Vanessa was standing by the bulletin board, clipboard in hand. "What's going on?" Natalie asked Brandon. He whispered, "She's launching a vote to dissolve Chris's leadership on the merger oversight team. She claims the scandal with you weakened investor confidence." Natalie's breath caught. "She can't do that." "She's trying." At that moment, Vanessa turned and announced, "We need new leadership. Someone who knows how to play clean." Natalie stepped forward, loud and clear. "You mean someone who plays for both sides?" The room fell silent. Vanessa narrowed her eyes. "Excuse me?" Natalie pulled the envelope from her bag. "I have documents proving you've been in contact with King and York. I'm sure the board will be interested." Vanessa's smile wavered. "You're bluffing." "Try me." Chris emerged just in time to see the final standoff. Vanessa turned to him, voice dripping with false sweetness. "Chris, tell her, this is all just a misunderstanding." "Right." He took the envelope, scanned it, and froze. His expression hardened. "Vanessa Blake, as of this moment, your contract with Junheng Law is terminated. Permanently." Gasps rang out. Vanessa paled. "You're siding with her?" she whispered. "I'm siding with the truth." Vanessa laughed bitterly. "You'll regret this, Chris. You always come back to me." He turned away. Natalie met Vanessa's eyes. "No," she said softly. "He won't." Later that night, Chris found Natalie in the quiet garden balcony overlooking the city. "I should have listened to you sooner," he said. She didn't respond. He walked closer. "You were right about her. About all of it." Natalie sighed. "I didn't want to be." He watched her for a moment. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" She looked up at him. "Because I wasn't sure you believed me." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I bought this after the investigation cleared your name. I didn't know why at the time, but I do now." He opened the box. Inside was a simple ring. Elegant. Timeless. Natalie blinked. "Chris, this fake marriage started with my grandmother's plan, but I wanted to end with my own." He held the ring toward her. "No more pretending. Natalie Shaw, will you marry me for real this time?" Natalie Shaw stared at the ring box in Christopher Grant's hand. For a moment, she forgot how to breathe. Chris, stoic, logical, courtroom terrifying Chris, was proposing. Not for show, not for Grandma Evelyn, but for real. She blinked. "Chris, are you serious?" He held her gaze. "Dead serious." "But this, we're only—" "Married, I know," he finished, smiling faintly. "But I don't want it to be a contract anymore. I want it to be a choice." Her heart thudded so loud she could hear in her ears. She opened her mouth to speak, and her phone rang. Natalie hesitated, then picked it up. "Hello, Miss Shaw." It was Mr. Quinn from compliance. His tone was flat. "Cold. You'll need to come in first thing tomorrow. We've received new information regarding your status at the firm." She froze. "I'm sorry, what new information?" "There's an accusation. Fraud. Impersonation. You're being accused of forging a marriage with Mr. Grant to manipulate corporate control." Natalie's stomach dropped. "What?" "That's absurd. We'll discuss it tomorrow. 8 a.m. sharp." Click. Chris's expression darkened as she lowered the phone. "What was that?" Natalie shook her head slowly. "They think They think I faked our marriage to take over Junheng. Chris stood abruptly. This is Vanessa's last shot. No, Natalie whispered, panic rising. This time, she's not alone. She has help. By morning, the entire firm was buzzing again, but not with admiration. It was open suspicion. Natalie arrived to find her access card revoked. Brandon Hill met her in the lobby with an apologetic shrug. I'm sorry. They froze your credentials. I'm still legally employed, she argued. He whispered. They say the marriage certificate is fake, that you bribed Grandma Evelyn to play along, that Chris didn't sign anything. Natalie stared at him. That's insane. But when she reached the main conference room, she understood. Vanessa was already seated, flanked by two representatives from King and York, now revealed as co-conspirators. Several board members sat to the side, watching her like hawks. Mr. Quinn sat at the head. And worst of all, Chris wasn't there. Where's my husband? Natalie asked. Vanessa smirked. He had a hearing out of town, unavailable to testify. Liar, Natalie thought. Let's begin, Mr. Quinn said. Miss Blake has submitted evidence that your marriage certificate was fabricated. I have the original. Natalie started. And we've seen it, he interrupted. But the municipal office claims no copy was registered. Without digital confirmation, your legal marriage is questionable. Natalie's mouth went dry. Vanessa leaned back, examining her manicure. All this time we thought you were just ambitious. But now we know you're dangerous. Objection, Natalie said, standing. This is a character assassination, not a hearing. This is a review of trust, Mr. Quinn replied. And your trust is in question. Just then, the door flew open. Grandma Evelyn entered with a flourish. Natalie, she said loudly, there you are. I brought your breakfast. Everyone turned. Evelyn walked to front and set down a plastic container with a goosey soup and rice. Mr. Quinn blinked. Madam, this is a closed review. And I'm a board member emeritus, she snapped. You'll listen to what I have to say. Natalie whispered, Grandma, this isn't the time. Yes, it is, Evelyn said. She turned to Mr. Quinn. You want proof she's my granddaughter-in-law? I have it. She pulled out her phone and tapped a few buttons. You see, you thought you were smart disabling access to the municipal digital registry, but I have a notarized hard copy with state stamps. She handed over a folder. Inside was the official certificate, signed, dated, notarized. Chris's signature gleamed in ink. The room fell into stunned silence. Additionally, Evelyn continued, I've already filed defamation claims against Miss Blake and King and York for attempting to smear my family's name. Vanessa paled. Have fun explaining to the court how you fabricated a deletion notice from the marriage registry. Evelyn added, that's a federal offense. Mr. Quinn coughed. We will need to reconvene. No need, Evelyn said. She's innocent. And this little snake, she pointed at Vanessa, has worn out her welcome. Later that afternoon, Natalie stood on the balcony again, trying to process it all. Chris arrived an hour late, briefcase in hand. You're back, she said, not turning. I'm sorry I wasn't here. They said you were out of town. He placed the briefcase down and sighed. I wasn't. Vanessa sent a fake email to the clerk's office from my account. It said I recused myself. Natalie turned to him, her voice strained. So, she nearly ruined everything again. She didn't, Chris said, stepping closer, because you didn't break. She folded her arms. I'm tired of surviving, Chris. I want to live. I want to work without being accused. I want to love without it being some strategic move. Chris reached into his pocket and pulled out the ring again. This still stands, he said gently, despite everything, because I don't care what the firm says. I don't care what Vanessa says. And I don't care what the world thinks. He took her hand and pressed the ring into her palm. When I asked you before, it was out of urgency. But now it's out of clarity. Natalie, I love you. I want a future with you. For real. Natalie stared at him, speechless. Then she slowly slid the ring onto her finger. I love you, too, she whispered. And this time it wasn't pretend. That evening, Vanessa was escorted out of the building by security. But as she stepped into her limo, she turned to the man waiting inside. "You were right," she muttered. "They're not as weak as we thought." The man in the suit handed her a folder marked Project Titan. Inside were classified documents about Junheng's pending expansion into Europe. "I still have friends in Junheng," he said. "Natalie may have one today, but tomorrow is mine." Vanessa smirked. "Let's see how long their little love story lasts when we take everything else from them." A week after Vanessa's dramatic ousting, peace finally seemed to return to Junheng Law. Natalie Shaw now walked through the hallways with steady steps and eyes that met every curious gaze head-on. The once judging whispers had turned into quiet respect, even admiration. A cleaner-turned legal associate, the wife of the firm's most celebrated attorney, and the woman who'd stood up to an heiress and won. And yet, something still didn't sit right. Vanessa was gone, but Natalie's instincts told her the game wasn't over. Especially not after she discovered her inbox had been accessed remotely. "Brandon," she asked one morning, pulling the tech-savvy assistant aside, "can you check something for me?" He raised an eyebrow. "Of course. What's going on?" "I think someone tried to log into my account. I got a system alert, but the IP address didn't match our office network." Brandon narrowed his eyes. "You think Vanessa left a bug?" "I think she wasn't working alone," Natalie said quietly. Later that day, Brandon confirmed her fears. "You were right," he said, lowering his voice as they spoke in a secluded corner of the rooftop garden. "There was an attempted remote login from an outside device last night. Someone was trying to access your emails and legal drafts. Did you trace it?" Brandon nodded grimly. "To a co-worker's desktop. Felix Turner." Natalie's jaw clenched. "Felix? I thought he backed off after Melissa and Yao were fired." "Apparently not," she said. "And if he's working with someone outside..." Brandon looked serious. "I checked further. He's been sending documents through a personal flash drive. He's not dumb. He bypassed the firm server entirely." Natalie exhaled. "We need proof." "I have an idea," Brandon said, pulling out a tiny USB. "A recording bug, hidden inside this fake charger. If he plugs this into his workstation, we'll capture every file transfer and screen activity." Natalie nodded. "Let's do it." 2 days later, Brandon handed Natalie a hard drive. "You'll want to sit for this," he warned. She popped it into her laptop. On screen, Felix, alone in the records room, copying Junheng's confidential expansion files. Then a video call. Vanessa's face appeared on the monitor. "Did you get it?" she asked. Felix nodded. "It's all here. Project Titan, internal mergers, client acquisition strategy. Everything." Vanessa smiled. "Perfect. Delivered tonight to our Easton contact." Natalie hit pause. "Easton contact?" she whispered. "Wait." She rewound the footage and enhanced the corner of the call window. A small watermark blinked. "King and York, Easton branch." They weren't just trying to ruin Natalie's reputation. They were planning to steal Junheng's future. That evening, Natalie went straight to Christopher's office. He was reading through a stack of non-litigation contracts when she burst in. "Chris, we have a problem." He looked up instantly. "What happened?" She handed him the hard drive. As he watched the footage, his face darkened with each second. "I trusted Felix," he muttered. "I even vouched for him when he transferred from litigation. He's working directly with Vanessa," Natalie said. "And there's more. Brandon found multiple sensitive files on King and York's cloud server. They're preparing to launch a competing firm in Europe using our strategy." Chris stood. "We need to act. Now." "Already one step ahead," she said, holding up her phone. "I've scheduled a board meeting for 7 p.m. I wanted you to see it first." Chris stared at her for a moment. "You're amazing," he said softly. Natalie smiled. "Took you long enough to notice." By 7 p.m., the boardroom was full. The air crackled with tension. Felix Turner stood near the door, confused but composed. "You wanted me, sir?" Chris nodded. "Yes. We wanted the entire board to witness something important." Natalie connected her laptop to the screen. "Let's start with a playback," she said. Felix's face turned pale as the footage rolled. His theft, the call with Vanessa, the full plan revealed in stunning clarity. When the recording ended, he stammered, That's not real. That's fake." Digital forensics confirmed the authenticity. Brandon said from the corner, "Nice try." Felix looked around the room. No one moved. Then he made a desperate dash for the door. But security was already waiting. "You won't get away with this," Felix spat as they dragged him out. "Vanessa will." "Vanessa's already under investigation," Chris said coldly. "And you just signed your own warrant." After the board meeting, Natalie sat beside Chris on the balcony with a glass of juice in her hand and the cool night breeze brushing against her skin. "You saved Junheng," he said, watching her instead of the stars. She shook her head. "We saved Junheng. I almost lost everything," he whispered. "The firm, my name, you." She looked at him. "You never lost me." He leaned forward and kissed her forehead. "Let's never fake anything again." "I agree," she said softly. He pulled a small envelope from his jacket. "What's this?" she asked. "Our new marriage certificate," he replied. "This time, filed properly, legally verified, stamped, and real." Natalie laughed through the tears that welled up in her eyes. "Real sounds good." "Also," he held up his phone, "I told Grandma Evelyn." Natalie groaned. "She's going to throw a wedding banquet, isn't she?" Chris smirked. "Two. One at Junheng and one in the village." Natalie leaned on his shoulder. "You owe me big time." "I'll pay," he said, "with everything I have." Just then, Grandma Evelyn called. When Natalie picked up, she didn't say hello. She screamed, "I knew it. Now hurry up and give me a great-grandchild before I pass out from excitement." Click. Natalie and Chris burst into laughter. But far from Heischer, in a quiet office in Easton, a shadowy figure received an encrypted message. Felix caught. Vanessa under heat. Phase 2 must begin. He leaned back and opened a folder marked Operation Collapse. Beneath it, photos of Junheng executives. At the center, Christopher Grant and Natalie Shaw. "They've won the battle," he murmured. "But the war has just begun." The morning sun spilled to the tall windows of Junheng Law Firm, lighting up the central lobby where a grand floral arch had been erected overnight. Beneath it stood Grandma Evelyn, directing florists like a general in combat. More lilies on the left. "And someone removed that horrible orchid. It looks like a retirement bouquet," she barked, then turned and beamed at the board members walking past. "My grandson is getting properly married today, and this firm will never be the same." Indeed, it wouldn't be. The past month had shaken Junheng to its core. Betrayals exposed, power plays neutralized, and secret alliances broken. But it also revealed a rare truth. Love, when rooted in loyalty and honor, could survive anything. Everyone turned as Natalie walked down the aisle, her arm linked with Grandma Evelyn's. Chris forgot to breathe. She reached the altar, and Evelyn dramatically kissed her on the cheek. "I've never been more proud of a girl I forced into a marriage." Everyone laughed. Natalie locked eyes with Chris. "Are we really doing this?" He smiled. "For real this time." The ceremony was brief but heartfelt. No legal jargon. No elaborate rituals. Just two souls making promises. "I didn't fall in love with a title," Natalie said in her vows. "I fell in love with a man who stood up for me even when the world didn't." Chris took her hands. "I never knew I could love someone who challenged me in court and at home. But I do, with everything." Cheers erupted as they kissed. Grandma Evelyn wiped her eyes, then shouted, "Now go make me a great-grandchild." At the reception, guests gathered in the courtyard where champagne flowed and music filled the air. The legal elite mingled with intern janitors and security guards. It was the most unorthodox event Junheng had ever hosted. "Doesn't feel like a law firm," Brian mused. Chris nodded. "Feels like a family." Across the room, Natalie spoke with a group of young interns, sharing her journey, from mop bucket to marriage. "Believe in your voice," she told them, "even when others try to silence it." They nodded, hanging on to every word. "She's going to be a legend here," Brandon said beside Chris. "She already is," Chris replied, eyes soft. Just as the party peaked, a sharp voice interrupted. "Excuse me." All heads turned. A man in a crisp gray suit stepped onto the dance floor, flanked by two plainclothes investigators. "I'm Agent Duval with Easton Special Crimes Unit. I need to speak with Mr. Christopher Grant and Mrs. Natalie Grant." Natalie froze. Chris's jaw tightened. "What's this about?" Agent Duval held up a folder. "It concerns Operation Collapse. The sabotage scheme against Junheng. There's a deeper network, and the last leak may be closer than you think." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "We found encrypted financial transactions linking an internal Junheng account to King and York's European Bank. The access codes match your profile, Mr. Grant." The air turned ice cold. "What?" Natalie whispered. "That's not possible," Chris said. "I haven't sent a dime." Agent Duval nodded. "We believe your credentials were forged by someone close to you, someone who had unrestricted access to your office." All eyes shifted. Natalie blinked. "You don't mean—" Agent Duval turned to crowd. "Mr. Brandon Hill, you're under arrest for corporate espionage and conspiracy." Gasps erupted as two officers stepped forward and cuffed him. "Chris, Natalie, I can explain." Brandon cried. "They threatened my family. Vanessa's contact said if I didn't cooperate." Chris stepped between him and Natalie. "Then you should have come to us." Brandon was led away, sobbing. The celebration paused. The music died. Natalie clutched Chris's arm. "We'll handle it," he whispered. "Together." A week later, after the dust settled, Chris and Natalie stood in the empty rooftop garden, overlooking the city. "So, our wedding got interrupted by espionage," Natalie said dryly. Chris laughed. "Better than a cake disaster, I suppose. Do you think we'll ever get a normal day?" He turned to her. "With you? I don't want normal. I want this. Chaos, laughter, passion, partnership." She leaned on him. "You really are a hopeless romantic, Counselor Grant." He kissed the top of her head. "Only for you, Mrs. Grant." A breeze swept through the garden, carrying with it the scent of jasmine and new beginnings. And for the first time in a long time, Natalie felt safe, not because the battle was over, but because she wasn't fighting alone anymore.